Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thank you for joining me on a new episode of Best and Worst Track of the Week on the Music Reviewer Podcast. Today's Best and Worst Track of the Week is going to be covering October 10th, or the week of October 10th. And if you're new to Best and Worst Track of the Week, all it is me covering the new entries onto this week's Billboard Hot 100, taking one track that's the worst, taking one that's the best, and then also grading the rest with the letter grade. Overall, I thought it was another interesting week. I didn't overall think most of the tracks that came in this week were as bad as last week, but still it was fun overall. There's obviously, this is a drama packed week with one of the first songs that came in this week that I'll get to in here in a second, and then also some interesting artists that I kind of wasn't really expecting either to come in. But there's always something every week that kind of surprises me. Nonetheless, just to start out, some highlights. There's a new number one, actually, which I thought was pretty interesting. Franchise by Travis Scott featuring Young Thug and M.I.A. I'll get to the review of that track in a sec, but it dethroned BTS, which BTS's Dynamite, which went down to number 2. Don't know how long that will hold. Usually it seems like Travis Scott's stuff that's been entering hasn't really been doing too well the second week after debuting, so I suspect WAP or BTS will go back to number 1 unless I'm probably leaving out something else that debuted highly, but we'll see. Number 3 is WAP. So yeah, again, WAP losing some traction, but still, for how long it's been already since its debut, number 3 isn't too bad. Another thing I wanted to point out too is I haven't talked about the song just mainly because of how long it's been on this chart. Is Blinding Lights by The Weeknd is still going up somehow, and it went up I think 1 or 2 spots to like number 6. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that. That's pretty impressive for how long. 44 weeks on the charts. And somehow still gaining traction. I suspect maybe a radio play. But anyways, and then another, if you listened last week, I covered a track by Keith Urban in Pink that I thought was interesting. One Too Many, where I predicted that it would go down, but I also added that maybe, knowing my luck, it's probably going to rise. But it looks like it's went down significantly, like I suspected, to 99, which it could still possibly go up again. We never really know, but I thought that was interesting. One of our worst tracks of the week as well, Heather by Conan Gray, continuing to go down at 60. Seems like it's kind of finally losing its footing. Maybe in a couple weeks it'll kind of go away. Pretty Heart by Park McCollum, still really going up slowly. It's winning that race, the tortoise race. It's going up to 50. It went up to 58 this week, so slowly but steady, still making its way up. Same thing with our other track here, AJR, Bang by AJR. Went up 1 spot to 32, which I suspect it might be reaching its peak, but you never know. This track has surprised me, even though I don't really like it. I want to see how far it can go. But yeah, let's go ahead and cover our first track of this week. This is going to be the most controversial one. I kind of had to convince myself to just review it because it wouldn't really be fair just because this artist came in to you guys if you really wanted to hear what I thought about it, even though, you know, that if you're taking real world scenarios in, you probably don't really care for this track by Tory Lanez, Money Over Fallouts, that debuted at 97. I don't really want to give it too much light. You know, the instrumental's okay. It's a meta track that kind of talks about the scandal and obviously his alleged assault on Megan Thee Stallion for shooting her, which I think is a terrible thing. He shouldn't really be praised for a song describing that incident, but I'm also a proponent of separating artists and art, but in this situation he didn't really do that. He inserted himself quite thoroughly in here. So yeah, that's kind of all I had to say about this track. It's an okay rap song if you're taking away the the actual seriousness of the issue. So I gave it a C. And the next track I thought was super interesting as well. Put Your Records On by Ritt, Momney at 96. It appears that this is maybe a up-and-coming a bedroom pop artist, which I don't know if bedroom pop is still hasn't reached its full potential. It's been around for quite a while. If you know some of the origins, it kind of started from Mac DeMarco's aesthetic, even though he's not really a bedroom pop artist. The reason why this track is a little interesting to me is it's a cover by Corneille Bailey Ray's Put Your Record On, that mid-2000s pop song that was somewhat of a prominent hit at the time. I probably butchered her name, but nonetheless, Put Your Records On is the name of the track. And the track overall on this cover is supported by some fuzzy synth textures that kind of hold true to the bedroom pop kind of aesthetic. There's some reverby parts that get a little ugly in the intro. Some sparkly synth textures as well that happen when the track picks up, and they're quite nice when they actually come in. I'm not really a fan of this track being covered, to be honest. I think Ritt Momney executes it decently. It isn't quite regurgitated without any creativity either, so he did kind of put a twist on it. And towards the end, there's like a loose, chopped and screwed sort of transitional part towards the end that I'm not really a huge fan of. I think it was a bit unnecessary. I just don't think it's the timing was quite right to cover this track. I think it was kind of a pandering thing to cover this track, especially since this is like a track that is gaining this artist prominence. I don't know if I would want to be known for a cover of this track. That it really isn't all that old. I'm not saying there's like a set standard to cover things either, but I feel like the track was fine the way it was. I kind of just want to hear one artist sing it ever, but that's just my opinion. I gave this track a B-. I thought it was okay. And then the next track we have came in at 93, Big Big Plans by Chris Lane. Chris Lane is actually, this is another thing that I thought was interesting, because Chris Lane is a country artist that I remember liking a couple years ago when, I was kind of listening to a fair amount of country radio. He had this track called Take Back Home Girl. At least that was the name of the chorus. Let me see the actual name of the track. Yeah, Take Back Home Girl. Yeah, the track was Take Back Home Girl featuring Tory Kelly. And I thought that track was decent. I never really looked too much into Chris Lane, but anytime it came on the radio, I thought it was fine. I wouldn't really ever skip it. He doesn't really have the same, I guess, prominence or, I guess, charisma on this track here. Big Big Plans. The track kind of starts out a little subdued in the beginning, and there's even like some anticipatory sort of elements to it, but then it quickly transitions to like a light and almost tropical sounding country track with like some poppy nature to it. Maybe like, if you will, some Florida Georgia Line Hand Me Down type of track that, could have easily been used for their stuff, but it kind of just never was. But it was maybe just never utilized by them. It just sounds like that kind of thing. It has like a generic "I'm gonna marry this girl" type of subject matter that's common in country music. Just not as charismatic as on the other track I know him for. So I still would give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to judge him completely off this track, but I thought this track was pretty lackluster. I gave it a C. And then we have our little bits of what came through from Machine Gun Kelly's album, Drunk Face. Machine Gun Kelly, of course, being the rap artist turned pop punk singer, songwriter type deal thing going on. To be honest, I never really listened to his music. The only reason I'm really listening to it now is because one, it's performed in a fashion that I guess slightly care a little bit more about. But even then, I'm a very loose pop punk listener. But I'm just gonna go ahead and say he's not bad at doing this. There's really nothing wrong with it, I think. I think it's pretty cool that he did transition to this type of thing. Overall, the track, though, this one, Drunk Face, I think it was one of the weaker ones from this small batch. The track builds off of this trap and pop-punk hybrid subgenre a la Juice WRLD, and the track is best when the track cuts out the trap aesthetics, but arguably the trap hi-hats do sound fine alongside the live drum track, which I believe is performed by Travis Barker, which is an excellent thing to have. And that usually happens like on the chorus when you get those moments, and it makes the track even more catchy, which is what all I really think the track has going for it. It's catchy in a sense, and I also hear like some loose Sum 41 influence on these tracks, which I think is a good thing if you're going to be going for this thing, type of genre. So yeah, I gave this track a C. The next track is Better by Zayn, another really interesting thing going on here. He is, I don't think I've really thoroughly covered any former One Direction artists, but I've always thought Zayn had probably the best or one of the best voices. I don't know in terms of like talent wise how he compared to like the juggernaut of Harry Styles, but I feel like he always held his own on One Direction tracks. This track overall, I felt like I didn't really like some of the production on here, like the distorted kick drum on this track. There's a huge relaxed R&B aesthetic to this track as well. But yeah, I just don't think this track serves Zayn that well. I think he's a suburb vocalist, but I don't think this track really gives him I don't know if he just didn't really go for that here, if he was just going for like a vibe. But yeah, the track overall is just anticlimactic. It really doesn't build anywhere or build up to anything really. So I had to think about what really this track is reminding me of, and maybe it just reminds me of like a very loose interpretation of an Alan Stone track with all this soulfulness thrown in, but with none of the energy and charisma Alan Stone would have put in. And I don't even really like Alan Stone. I just know he kind of has that very soulful, sultry thing in nature about him. For some reason, I think Zayn maybe was going for that. But I gave this track a C. The next track was also very surprising to me as well to see. It was refreshing because I guess I'm old or something. It was called You Two Love by Neo and Jeremih. And this is really interesting because these are two artists that have been around for quite some time, but they are completely overshadowed by the transition to what pop music has become. And that really isn't too bad. I mean, I felt like they had plenty of time to explore their careers and, build their fan bases. Neo came out when I was like, I think his first single was like when I was in 5th grade or 6th grade. So it feels like he never quite got the respect he deserved, though. I've always been, somewhat of a proponent of Neo. It feels like at one point maybe he stopped music altogether, because I kind of remember a point in time, maybe around like 2010 or 2011 till now, that he just really wasn't putting out much. And then Jeremih has always been pretty solid. I feel like his career somehow resurged a little bit in the mid-2010s, but he's also been quiet as well. And I've always liked his voice as well. I think he has a very fine voice. And this track overall really grooves. I like it. I'm kind of surprised how these two fit together. They fit nicely together. This has a very typical Jeremih performance to it, where it sounds captivating for the most part. Neo doesn't really sound like he's missed a step either. And the instrumental, I like it overall. It's bouncy with how it incorporates like some electronic and synthy elements. And I can only hope that this catches on, but I think it probably would have fared better in the era that they were more popular in. But yeah, the track has overall really good flow. I like it. To B+. And then we have more Machine Gun Kelly. I like this track too, Bloody Valentine. I think it was like one of the lead singles. I liked it more than the other one that I covered, Drunk Face. This track overall has like, it's more memorable. It If not, it's probably the most memorable track on this album that he just came out with. The track builds up nicely as well as it develops into like this chorus that has like a bit of a Blink-182 flavor. There's like a driving eighth note layer to it that really serves the track well. There's some synth textures that are thrown in as well that, you know, make the track more, I guess, charismatic and, colorful. And I'm not a fan of like this transitional part in the song. That's the only part I really had a problem, where it has like this marching beat snare section going on where it was like a marching pattern. It just sounded a little, I guess, clumsy, but and the bridge overall sounded a bit rushed, but I gave this track a B. The next track was from Polo G, titled Epidemic. I think Polo G was on here last week with one of Little Tecca's tracks, which I think all those tracks dropped out now that I think of it, from last week. I'll have to double check on that. But anyways, this is like another clean guitar trap instrumental. You get the point already. Like, everyone's doing this. It's definitely has like this life's hard, thug life subject matter on here. His performance here is decent overall. His singing sounds quite natural and not really manipulated like other artists in his scene. And his rapping overall seems captivating. I thought it was just a very decent track, so I give it a B-. Forget Me Too, by MGK and Halsey. This one was another interesting one, mainly because Halsey is doing some sort of pop punk, tribute here, which has never been heard before, but I can only, from the little I know about Halsey, I can only, I guess, project that she is a pop punk, fan in a sense. But definitely this track leans more on traditional pop punk music, especially with the punk aesthetics. This one is this track is very much so more punky than the rest of them. There's an aggressive drum track on here, some punchy guitar lines, and a very trebly bass sound. And it's very convincing of that aesthetic, and it's well executed. And Halsey does not sound good in this context, in my opinion. She kind of sounds like someone in the MySpace era that was performing in their first band. That's kind of just the sense I got when hearing her. But I do appreciate her enthusiasm in the performance. There wasn't really technically anything wrong. She just sounded a bit, unflattering. And she just didn't really quite line up with like MGK's, I guess, overall nature. And she kind of just was a sore thumb in this context. So overall, I thought the song was decent, but overall it wasn't really doing it for me. So I gave it a C-. And then the next track was also, this was the number one on the charts this week. I thought this was a pretty interesting track, mainly because this is featuring Young Thug and M.I.A, but this track is by Travis Scott. But I've always felt like Young Thug could have been in some alternate universe what Travis Scott is now in terms of like relevance. I felt like if there was just something slightly different that happened, a different trend, or if there is a different like occurrence that happened in some parallel universe, Young Thug is getting the Young Thug meal at McDonald's. Because I think Young Thug's charismatic, he's interesting, and he fits well with any time he's featured on most tracks. And this track isn't any exception. This is a good track. I like the deep and fuzzy synth bass line on here that structures the track well. Travis has this typical rhythmic flow mannerisms, nothing too uncharacteristic of him, but nothing really boundary pushing either. It's kind of just what Travis Scott does. Young Thug sounds different on here though. It's a good type of different though. I like to see him, like I say, collaborating with Travis Scott more. And the beat has like this dark and eerie characteristic to it. The only thing that a lot of people have been saying, and I kind of agree, but I don't think as bad it's as bad as it some people are saying, is the M.I.A. feature. She was actually used pretty minimally too, so she doesn't really do too much damage to this. Towards the end, she kind of does become a little unfitting, but it was literally like in the last 10 seconds of the song. By then, it's kind of just like, okay, what's done is done. I don't think it's that bad, like some people I've seen are saying. But anyways, I give this track a B. So we're to that point where I go over the best and the worst track of the week. And, this worst track of the week, I didn't dislike it as much as like last week, but I still was a little annoyed of it. I'll start on the worst track just so we can end on a positive note. The track is Good Time by Nico Moon. Honestly, I don't know who Nico Moon is, but just by listening to this track, I can kind of get a gist of who he is, because this is a play on the country trap quasi trend that, of course, happened because of Old Town Road. But this has none of the, charm of Old Town Road. So I guess Nico Moon is a pop country artist trying to piggyback on this. This track has overall a huge pop country flavor to it, especially with the trap beat that's featured. There's an acoustic guitar that structures the track overall, but to me the acoustic guitar just sounds uninteresting. It sounds dry. There's something about this that is a little dull and lackluster, and it just kind of like, it goes for something that's trying to be fun, but it's not fun. And it just tries to be overly chipper, but it doesn't sell it at all. And it's a shame that this track is so pandering, because the lead vocalist on here has a good voice, and he would sound better maybe singing on something more of the Chris Stapleton sort of side of country, not really this cheap brand of it. So this track really is kind of a victim of like what it's trying to be. So he gave it worst track of the week. And then the best track of the week here. Another track that I think kind of won by default. Maybe if M.I.A. wasn't in franchise, this would have gone to M.I.A. or Travis Scott. But this track is a Latin pop track by an artist that I think has been around for a while, titled Ay Dios Mío by Karol G. Karol G is a Latin pop artist that I guess plays on the reggaeton scene. She's from Colombia. She's had some prominence. She kind of does the promiscuous type of thing, with some of her hits being Mi Cama. That's a pretty risque track. Which several artists in this vein are doing that sort of thing, the promiscuous sort of risque thing. So that isn't, I guess, too important to mention, but she is definitely in that vein. But this track is not like that. This track has like a smooth Latin R&B, Bad Bunny type of aesthetic. It has like this decent creamy and light synth texture in the track that gives the track a dreamy mood overall. And the vocal performance here is quite smooth as well. It feels almost effortless. And the track really leans on the side of creating a vibe and like a tranciness, and it's very easily listening. It's not bad. Her vocal performance here is decent. The track overall has a nice message about, I guess, an important person, a boyfriend in her life that I think is another famous artist, Anuel AA, who I've touched on a bit. But yeah, it's a nice little love track. I gave it best track of the week. I thought it was solid overall. But yeah, that's the gist of this episode. We covered a lot of tracks, so thanks for sticking around if you made it to this part. I think this episode's a little lengthy. Anyways, however you stream today, whether it's on YouTube or the other streaming platforms that the Music Reviewer podcast is on, thanks for listening. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you have any feedback, positive or negative, let me know. I'm fine with whatever you want to let me know too. Thanks for listening. I'll review some more music later. Have a good one.